So you got all your gear, you got everything ready to go. What you want to know? What size fuse do I need to run this amp, that amp? Well, that's not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, how big is your wire? How much power are you trying to get from front to the back? How big is the conduit that you're trying to move that power on? Those are the questions you need to ask. You see, I'm moving quite a bit of power. 2 alternators, and I got 4 batteries right now. What kind of fuses am I running? Well, I'm running 2 300 amp fuses up here. I'm also running 2 300 amp fuses in the back by the other 2 batteries. Just got to fuse both ends of that wire to protect the wire. So, in a nutshell, you need the proper size wire to go the length you need it to go to equal up to the amount of amps you're going to pull through it for your amplifier. And then you need the proper size fuse for that size and length of wire. If you're going to run, say, a 1,000-watt amplifier, you're going to need a wire that can handle 100 amps of power the distance that you're going to run it. So if it's around 17 feet or less, then you're going to need 100 amps, which is here, to go 13 to 16 feet. 100 amps, you're looking at a 4-gauge wire. That 4-gauge will handle even up to 16 to 19 feet, 100 to 125 amps. Now that is OFC wire, not CCA. And on that 4-gauge wire, you're going to need a 100 amp fuse, because you're basing the amperage of the fuse off the diameter and the length of the wire that you're fusing. So in that scenario, a 100 amp fuse will protect that wire of that length. On the same note, if you're going to pull 300 amps of current over 16 to 19 feet, you would need a alt gauge wire. And on that alt gauge wire at 16 to 19 feet, alt gauge, you would need a 300 amp fuse. It doesn't matter what amp you're putting on it, that wire at that length needs a 300 amp fuse. If you're going to be pulling 600 amps, you need 2 of those wires and 2 300 amp fuses. As a rule of thumb, you can figure 100 amps per 1,000 watts, or 1 amp per 10 watts. So a 10,000 watt amp is going to pull around 1,000, or 10,000 watt amp is going to pull around 1,000 amps. In that case, you would need 4 300 amp fuses, or a different kind of fuse completely to allow you to get that much fusing. You would also need 4 alt gauge wires, or comparatively bigger wires, to be able to handle that power. So once you figure out the wire you're going to need to handle the power that you're going to pull over the distance that you're pulling it, then you figure out the fuse that you need for that wire, each individual one, so that if it pulls more current than the wire can handle and it starts to heat up, it'll blow the fuse instead of burning your car down.